Good evening and welcome to the Jay Duke Show on Horse Network. This show, I think we're going to need to rename to Talking with the Stars of the Sport, because tonight we have such a special guest. Leslie Burr Howard is joining us. And when I started this project, I knew we'd be talking to some amazing people. But to talk to people that we have been and like Leslie tonight is such a privilege and such an honor. And you guys are going to absolutely love what she has to say in the story she has to tell. Thank you to Horse Network for making this happen. Thank you to Carly Sparks for making this happen as well. All the work that she puts into it and behind the scenes is just amazing. The show tonight is brought to you by Finish Line Products. Finish Line, I was checking them out. They have 4 generations of family history behind them, and it goes all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt. They've been, working with horses all this time. They've been in business for over 40 years, providing amazing supplements for the health of your horse. You really have to check them out. They're proud to provide over 43 products to help your horse of any discipline. And one wonderful thing about them too is they have a 100% money back guarantee. So check out Finish Line Products and thank them so much for providing this episode tonight with Leslie Burr Howard on the Jay Duke Show. I also want to thank Equishopper. Equishopper is the Amazon of the horse world. Anything you need books, horse tips on care, training tips, equipment, fitting a bit, anything you want to know, check out equishopper.com. It's an amazing site and with wonderful products. And also tonight, check out the Equivault.com. That is the place to go for riding lessons. If you ever walked into an arena and you're like, geez, I don't know what I'm going to work on today. Check out Equivault.com. They have everything you need to provide hundreds and hundreds of exercises for you and your horse to work on. Everything from young horses to green horses to Grand Prix horses to equitation final. So check them out as well. Okay, so I'm going to bring on our guest tonight, Leslie Howard. She's won a couple things in her life. It's incredible looking at her past and her history and what she's still doing today. She's still winning Grand Prix today. She's won the Maclay finals. She won a gold medal at the LA Olympics and silver at the Atlanta Olympics. She's been AGA Rider of the Year. She's been the AHSA Equestrian of the Year. In 2018, she was inducted into the Pennsylvania National Horse Show Hall of Fame. In 2019, she was inducted into the Show Jumping Hall of Fame. And in 1986, she won the World Cup Finals in Gothenburg, Sweden. And in 1987, she won the De Maurier International in Calgary. Many of you will know that as the CN or CP Grand Prix, the $1 million. Now I think it's a $3 million class. So she has quite the history. And welcome, Leslie, to the show.
Thanks, Jake. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for joining us. And I was really excited when you said yes to coming on. You've been such a wonderful influence and ambassador to the sport for so many years. And I've ridden against you so many times and been behind you so many times, and it's been great to have you now on the show and talking to you. I want to start off with, riding fast. There's so many riders that are known for being great speed riders. Today, Richard Spooner, the master of faster. Obviously, Kent Farrington is such a wonderful fast rider. But I don't know if anyone's ever done it like you. And I'm going to start off with just a quick little story that I have with you. The first time competing against you in Calgary, and it was a 1.50 m international class, and I'd laid down a pretty fast round, and there was about 4 others of us, and we'd all within 1 second of one another. It was really, really tight class. And then you came in, I don't know if you were last in or second last in, right at the end, and you beat us all by 5 seconds. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I thought I'd done okay.
Well, that probably was good horsemanship.
And 5 seconds, you absolutely crushed us all. But anyway, it was an honor to ride against you, and it was an honor to lose that class to you. So I want to talk to you. How is it that you are so good at riding so fast in the ring?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the way you're brought up, frankly. These days, especially, everything's so the students are so watched over, and from the time you get in the saddle, you're taught every single move. And for me, fortunately, that wasn't the case. When I was 4 years old, my parents, who knew nothing about horses, handed me a Western saddle, rented me a pony down the road, and said, well, go have some fun. And I did. There's a story, and it's true, that I had a stopwatch and I had my little spotted Shetland pony and my Western saddle and a stopwatch, and I'd hit the stopwatch and I'd gallop around our yard, which was about 10 acres, as fast as I could. I'd come back to the same point, hit the stopwatch, look at it, hit the stopwatch again, and then gallop around the yard again. So I spent the whole morning of my summer vacation when I was 4 years old, racing around my backyard with absolutely no supervision whatsoever. So right from a very young age, I learned not to be scared. I think a lot of people, when they everything's so carefully planned for them, they never just learn how to go fast and have fun. And or many people, as you know, who grew up hunting or playing polo, they're not scared of the pace. So right from the beginning, I think that was a huge benefit, and also being so young. I know that when I try to ski, I haven't done it now so many years because I'm scared to death. But the same thing, if you take up a sport late in life, you're scared. I look down a ski slope and I'm terrified, absolutely terrified. I just, I come to the turn and I sit down because I'm too scared to turn and go continue down the slope. So, young and having no formal education in the beginning.
Wow, that's fantastic. And when you train your horses and when you're training yourself on your horses, I remember being at the World Cup finals with Hugo Simon the year he won with ET, and he won all three phases, and it was the same thing. We just couldn't catch him. He was just faster than we all were. And someone had asked him, a reporter had asked him, I said, well, Hugo, how are you so fast? How are you so good at that? And he said, well, this is just how I ride. This is how I practice. This is how I train. This is what I do. So for me, this is just normal. Do you practice now with your horses and your training? Do you practice riding fast?
Well, I don't necessarily think I practice going fast. I do ride a lot when I'm training. I do naturally ride a lot at the hand gallop, and train at the hand gallop. I think that's, this is a galloping sport. And I will also say that I think the riders in the last few years have become even faster. When you look at McLean and Kent ride a jump off, their turns are they're beyond believable. I think the way they turn right back in 6 or 7 strides on a rollback to 1.60 meter oxer and think nothing of it. I think in that way the sport has progressed a lot. So riding with pace and having your horse schooled, probably the fastest Grand Prix horse I ever had was a horse called Preaubert, who went to Jerez, the World's Championships. And what made him so fast was, yes, he had a huge stride, but he could do that. He could turn back in 6 or 7 strides to a big 1.60 meter oxer and think nothing of it. And to do that, you have to school your horse well, but you also, the athlete, the horse is such an incredible athlete now. The horses are amazing now.
They are. Yeah, to have that balance to land off a 1.60 meter jump and say 1.60 meter oxer and then turn and pivot and power all at the same time to get to the next jump, like you said, in 6 strides. You're right. That does take incredible training and incredible athleticism. So you did ride a horse in the past that had some athleticism, and it definitely, everyone's going to want to talk about this. And for those of you that are watching, if you have less questions for Leslie, please put them in and we'll try to get to them at the end of the show. But I want to start off with this one because for sure everyone's going to want to know about Gem Twist and your experience with him. That's, definitely the world's favorite horse, or for sure America's favorite horse. What was it like riding Gem Twist? What was that experience for you?
Well, obviously, talking about a phenomenal athlete, Gem was the ultimate phenomenal athlete. Careful, scopy, fast, all the ingredients, smart, very smart. But I think what really made him, over the years, to still be considered the best horse or one of the best horses is the fact that he did it with he won with 3 very, very different riders. Greg Best, who started him off, was, as you know, a big, tall guy, very strong, wonderful rider, obviously, but a man and much stronger than I am. I was the next one, and I'm probably 50 pounds lighter anyway than Greg, and certainly not as strong. And then Laura, who's very petite. He won probably as much with her as he did with anybody. So to be able a horse that can win with so many different riders, that to me is really says a lot about the horse.
Yeah, it really does. And no horse has ever done that before or since, or may never again. What was it like riding that horse after the success that Greg had? And obviously he had that terrible injury and that, contributed to you getting the ride. Was there a sense of pressure of riding such a well-known, famous horse to live up to what he had done?
I remember when Frank came and asked me to ride Gem. I didn't say yes right away, which I think probably surprised Frank. But I went home. I was married to Brian Lenihan at the time, and I said, "Well, Frank has asked me to ride Gem." I said, "I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can ride him as well. I don't know if I can have the success." And Brian looked at me and says, "Are you?" Well, I won't use his exact words, but he says, "Are you crazy?" He says, "You get on that horse tomorrow and have fun and go win, right?" And
Yes.
but it was very daunting, and it's not like I hadn't had some success already, but for myself, but it was nerve-wracking, and it was disappointing in a way because I didn't really have the immediate. I mean, I had nice results, but I really didn't have any really big wins. I had nice placings, but never any big wins until I'd actually been riding them about a year. And I think that was a little bit of a transition for me, but I do think that had to do a little bit with the transition for the horse too, because I was not as strong as Greg and different rider. And I always say to people, to me it takes a minimum of 6 months to really get to know a horse, and a year before you feel really comfortable on a horse. People buy these expensive horses and they just expect to get on and have it go like it did for the person before, but the person before had a relationship with the horse, and the horse had a relationship with the person, and it isn't that easy.
It's not, and I think that's well said. And I think people's expectations can get a little bit. You want that, and well, we're a society of immediate gratuity, and so it does take time to build that relationship with those horses. They need to trust you, and you need to learn how to talk to them, of course, through their body
absolutely.
language. That's a great story. I want to talk about the influence that Spruce Meadows has had on your career. So Spruce Meadows was originally created by Ron and Mark Southern to, for their children. And then they wanted to create a playground for young riders to develop into international riders. And I think most people are familiar with what Spruce Meadows has become. You've had a great relationship with Spruce Meadows for so many years. You've been, I think, a great influence on everything that they do there. How has Spruce Meadows changed the sport for Leslie Howard?
Well, I think I can't say enough about Spruce Meadows. The vision that Ron and Mark had from that, the cornfield that it was before they bought it. Yeah. Going back the year, when did it start? Late 60s or early 70s?
75. It began in 75.
Back then the sport was just in its infancy. There was nothing like that in this continent. And they went to places like Aachen and Hickstead and Dublin and watched and learned. And, Ron decided he wanted to bring his own Aachen to North America, and of all places, Calgary. Yeah. And the vision and to have that undertaking, I can't imagine, and it did take him probably, or them, it's what, 50 years now, about?
Yeah, close to 45 plus years, yeah.
Yeah, and now, now it is one of the, I say Spruce Meadows and Aachen, to me, are the two most premier venues in the world.
Yeah.
And the fact they've kept it on grass and they've kept to their traditions, and you really have to take your hat off to the Southern family for what they've done for our sport.
Yeah, no, it is incredible what they've done for the sport. What do you think about moving forward? Unfortunately, Spruce Meadows was canceled this year, as many of the horse shows were, and I know that they were very preemptive about it. I think they were one of the first people in any sport to step forward and shut down. And I've heard talk that moving forward that even, there's a possibility next year may or may not happen, depending on what's happening, because they're very concerned about this situation. What do you think about them stopping the shows so early? And do you think they should be trying to make it happen for the horse shows to resume there? Or do you think they are best to just, set an example?
Well, it's not up for, as Ron would say, it's not for me to say. Spruce Meadows will do what they have to do. Would we all love to be showing there last month at the Masters? Of course we would. But at the end of the day, we are in a pandemic. Calgary is, Alberta was being hard hit before the pandemic. Economically, I don't believe Alberta and Calgary is in the best place economically now. And they have wonderful sponsors. And I'm sure when it's time to carry on, they will.
Yeah. And you're not going to want to hear this, but the weather for the weekend when the Masters was supposed to be was perfect. It was perfect weather. And I know you've ridden there in the rain and the snow and the sleet.
Oh my God.
All sorts of conditions.
Oh my God. I was riding on a team, what was it, 10 years ago, whatever, when they literally had to cancel the first day and they had to plow the Grand Prix field. And then of course on Sunday it was 75 and sunny, but that's Calgary. You can't change the weather.
Why do you think you've had specifically so much success in Calgary? We've talked about your galloping style and obviously those big rings, but there is something magical about you and that show. You've won the big Grand Prix there, but you've won hundreds of other classes as well. Here's a picture of Subleaf jumping, looks like a triple bar there, which what a wonderful horse that was, and the way that horse stepped up at that facility. What do you think? What about you has worked for you with competing in Calgary?
I think that a couple of things, I guess. First of all, it is unlike a lot of venues in the world, especially these days when most of the venues are flat sand rings with very boring post and rail jumps. If you've ever been to Spruce Meadows, it is on grass. Some of the rings have a little hill to it. The jumps are the material is very varied. You'll have very light pulls, very skinny jumps, and then you'll have the old-fashioned 16-foot rails. So first of all, it's a bit of an eyeful for a rider who's never seen that, and certainly for a horse that's never seen that. It isn't like the generic courses and materials that you have today. So I think having a familiarity with that and feeling comfortable with that is one thing. And more than anything, it isn't so much that I've had so much success there as I've had great horses to be able to compete there. Let's be honest. There are a lot of, good riders around, but there's not only a handful of really good horses. And I've been blessed with great owners and great horses all my career. So, it's really more about them than it is about me.
Right. Well, that's beautifully said, and not surprising that, of course, you're going to give credit to the horses as you should. So I love that about you. Let's talk about the World Cup finals. You won the World Cup finals, which is an amazing feat. Congratulations on that. There was a time that you were there and they had an optional 2 or 3 stride line. So the World Cup finals are inside, they're in tight things. But when we're talking an optional 2 or 3, that's not something you definitely don't see that today. But even back then, you didn't see that very often. Describe what that was like.
Well, yeah, it was back in those days. The course, I don't think the course designers had, frankly, as much finesse as they do today. It was the last leg of the World Cup finals, and I was leading, and we walked the course, and the last line was an oxer vertical to an oxer. The last oxer was whatever the limits were those days in height and width. It was probably 160 square, I guess. And it was the first oxer to the vertical of the turn was a 4 or a 5
Okay.
option, but that's pretty normal. You always have option 4 or 5, right? The last two jumps, though, literally it walked in 2.5 strides, and of course Frank Chapeau, the great chef de keep of our team for so many years. He was the chef that year, and if anybody who knows Frank knows he was tough. And he looked at me and he says, "Well, this reminds me of Rome Olympics when I rode, and there was oxer, option 1 stride or 2 stride." And if you ever knew Frank, what his thoughts were. He says, "Well, I think you just gallop down and you leave out the stride all the way and you do the 2 stride." And I'm sort of like, like, really? And I got to go last. So that was obviously a good thing, because I got to see so many people really just swimming through the last jump because they tried to fit in the 3, and it really wasn't 2 or 3, but at least you were safe with pace. If you did the 2 and left the ground, you had a better chance of getting to the other side than if you did the 3. And everybody was sort of swimming and crashing and burning, and it was dreadful. And so I remember I was about to get on for my final warm up, and Frank says, "Well, what are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm doing the 2." And it worked.
And it worked. Yeah.
And it worked. Well, I was running McLean, named after McLean. McLean was just a little tiny boy at that time, and Barney had imported the horse's name was actually Bon Air, and Barney had imported the horse out of Germany, and he renamed the horse after his son McLean. So, a bit of trivia there.
With that line, was it somewhat split what the riders did? Though, is it kind of like a 50-50
No,
split?
more did 3. More did 3 than 2. But that's I think sort of typical of Europe, and especially of America at that time. Having we're going back now to 1986, and the riders, let's face it, we weren't. Yeah, we were technical, but we weren't. It wasn't as sophisticated as today, for sure. And Americans by nature always usually left the strides out. I mean, George to this day, when he's walking, of course, will lots of times have you leave strides out, where an English rider, for instance, would probably add the stride. So I think being American, that we tend to be a little bit more in tune with the hunter riding, the flow. It wasn't so much in the Europeans' mind to do the 2, and I think it was.
Right. Well, that would be an interesting thing to see today, and how many people would walk through the start gate if that was put out there for us today. Being on the LA Olympic team, 1984 with Conrad and Joe, and I love talking about the 84 Olympics because it really was such an epic year for show jumping with what happened. What was it like being a part of that experience? With the team gold, and then the individual gold and the individual silver there. What, and then of course on your home soil. What was Los Angeles like for you?
Well, obviously being the home team and having the crowd behind you is a huge asset. I was pretty young then. I was the youngest one on the team for sure. And it's really funny though, because I had never shown in Europe. I'd maybe done 1 or 2 Nations Cups, but at home, like at Madison Square Garden or Washington. So I'd never had the luxury of or the experience, I should say, of going to Europe and knowing what it was like to compete against the Whitakers and Nick Skelton and the Shakamula and all the top European riders. I didn't even know who they were. So my knowledge was very limited. Mm-hmm. And I had just heard, the Americans are sending such a great team. They're going to win the gold. And I thought, well, we're going to go to LA and we're going to win the gold, and that's going to be fun. So it was, I was so naive. It never occurred to me that we were gonna that we were gonna lose. So uh, I know now it's a lot harder, and I think when I went to Atlanta, it was a lot more nerve wracking than it was in LA, and that's Atlanta, isn't it? Yeah, because that's Ann. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was
That's what,
Peter and
you know,
Ann. Yeah.
last week, it's interesting you say that. Last week, had Mario Deloria on the show, and we were talking about when he won the World Cup at 18 or 19 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah. Same
And
thing. Yeah.
he just said, I didn't know any better. I just went out there and, galloped around the fences and away we went. And that sounds like a similar experience for you in LA.
Yeah, no, I remember watching. I remember when Mario won the World Cup finals, and he did. He just had his horse, and he was a little boy from Montreal, and he was what 18 years old or something. He just got on, just boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
collected this World Cup championship, and everybody's just looking like, wow, did that just happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is definitely something to be said in the sport for that naivety and just kind of going out and just riding your horse and not overthinking and not succumbing to the pressure, just going out there and just riding. And so what a great experience for you to do that. What would you say has been one of the biggest changes in the evolution of the sport? We talked about the courses have changed. You've talked about how the riders are more technical and the horses themselves are better athletes. You're still winning in the sport today. You've been winning the sport now for decades. How do you see as far as the evolution of the sport since you started with it?
Yeah, I mean, you've already touched on most of it, but it has changed so much. I remember my first year showing Grand Prix. I had a great horse called Chase the Clouds. It was 1979, and I was showing at Lake Placid, and they had the man, Gene Mish had invited this woman called Pamela Carruthers. Of course, I had no idea who she was, but of course, one of the best course designers of her era, maybe of all time. But in those days, the style was big, heavy poles and deep cups. And I'll never forget, I woke up, the morning of the Grand Prix at Lake Placid, and I went to come out and walk the course, and Gene had imported or replaced all the jumps with brand new jumps Saturday night. And every single jump was 16 feet long. So just like the old Spruce Meadows, and of course Spruce Meadows still has a few jumps that way, not as I would say probably 25% of their jumps are still 16 foot. But the whole course was 16 foot. And of course that was Pamela Carruthers' style. And now, of course, the jumps are so light. They're all machine, produced. So they're all of equal length, all of equal weight, perfectly rounded. The cups are more shallow. So it's a very different type of ride and a very different type of horse. You also didn't have to breakaway cups, which meant that, in the old days, you really had to make sure you got to the back rail. Didn't matter if you punched the front rail out on the way, but you had to make sure you didn't get to the back rail, because if you didn't, it was a collarbone, guaranteed a collarbone. I've broken mine twice, and but so it's such a different. It's so much more delicate, more technical. Because of that, the horses weren't as careful because they had to be able to take a knock.
Mm-hmm.
And not that they were uncareful, but they couldn't be as fragile a psyche as the horses of today. Like, I think a horse probably like Gazelle, who's so careful and so light, probably she wouldn't have been a great horse back in those times, in the late 70s and early 80s. So the horses are different. Obviously, that goes with more calculated riding. The riders have to be trained more. The horses have to be trained more, and obviously the money. Let's be honest. I'm so glad I'm not growing up now, because it's so difficult, I think, for young kids to get a start. I had I had tremendous opportunity, and I worked very hard. I didn't come from money.
Mhm.
But I think there are more opportunities than there are today for youngsters growing up. The horses have gotten so expensive. Showing has gotten so expensive. So it's evolved in so many different levels.
Yeah, it has changed, and as you said, there's pros and cons to that. There's no question, and it is. I think another difference in that, to add to that, is it used to be if you had that one super horse, you could go somewhere, and now
Hmm.
today, you need to have that string of 4, 5, 10 top
Oh,
horses.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
in
yeah. And you used to have though a nice string, you know, back then too. But yes, for sure, the amount of horses. Um, I think horses probably lasted longer uh, then than they did now, because of that reason. There weren't as many competitions for as much money, so you really focused on special events and when you want to peak your horse. And now, and not that, okay, for sure, people like McLean and Beasy, I mean, they really focus on the big picture, and
right.
and and have a plan, a strategy. But you see, especially with the Global Champions Tour, you see so many horses you've never seen before on a regular basis. um, the horses you see today may or may not, you may or may not see them in a year from now,
Mhm.
because the turnover rate, I think, is so high. um, so it's not the same, for sure.
If you could, make one wish or wave a magic wand for one thing to better the sport of show jumping, for 2021 and moving forward, in the sport, what is that one thing that Leslie Burr Howard would like to see, improved upon or changed within the sport?
Yeah, I mean, what I just touched on, I don't have the answer, um, but somehow to give more kids that have a lot of talent, that an opportunity. Um, you know, uh, I really don't have the answer, but I do know it's much harder for the average kid now to grow in the business. I have young kids come up to me all the time and say, well. Um, how do I get ahead? And of course, you tell them the way you did it, which was, I paid attention, I worked extremely hard, I mucked stalls, I grew my own horse, I did blah 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 blah, whatever I did to make it work. And because of that, I was given great opportunity by people like George. um, but at the same time, my parents dug up somehow $7,500 to buy my junior hunter. That doesn't happen these days. I mean, it just is impossible. So I don't have the answer, but that's what I would wish.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you 100% on that. There was one thing I could do. We'll wish for that one together. And I know there are a lot of people that feel the same. And, maybe one day there will be an answer to make those kids' dreams come true. Let's talk about Finish Line Horse Products. They've been with you for a long time, and they're a very established company. That's they're huge in the race horses. They're in the barrel racing.
Mhm.
They're in the type of horses. They're in obviously in the show jumping. Um, how has Finish Line Horse Products helped you and your horses?
Well, I can't say enough about the company. I've been with them for many years. I couldn't even guess how many, probably 20. Um, it's a great team they have. It's eh, the people that were running the company and there when I started are still there. And I think that's often a sign of a great company, is the longevity of the staff, right? They're still there. They're helpful. Their products are real quality products. And I just I can't. They cover everything from nutrition to gastric products,
Mhm.
joint products, fly spray, liniments. You name it. They really, anything to do with the horse, they really cover. And again, my probably my favorite product is just a product I've been using for years called Total Control, which is just an all-around horse supplement that really covers all the bases.
Well, that's fantastic. And anything that can help the horses stay healthy and showing and just happy in their lives is obviously a great thing. And check out Finish Line Horse Products. That's a super company. So we have a few questions for you from the watchers and viewers tonight. But first of all, I'm going to start with my own question. I'm going to jump the line here and ask you a question. And I do love this question, especially I want to hear your answer. Who's the one rider you've faced that you know is going to worry you the most in the jump off? Who's the one person you don't want coming after you in the jump off, or that you've got to go up against? Obviously, you've ridden against all of the top riders in the world for so many years. But who strikes a little fear into your heart?
Well, okay, I want to separate that into two questions. Okay, if I had to pick a rider today, I think McLean. I mean, he does the most amazing things with. I mean, Kent, McLean, Beasley, they're all great. But I especially think McLean has mastered turning better than any person I've ever met. He has a wonderful horse now called Nosh. Of course, I can't think of the rest of the name, but it's a very big. She must be 17 two hands. She looks huge. And usually big horses aren't fast horses. But I just watched him just recently at a jump off at Socrates. And he made leaving out strides, made the most incredible turns I've ever seen. So I would say probably, and Kent too, and they're all great, but I would say McLean seems to be able to turn on absolutely any horse. So that's the answer to that question. My favorite rider of all time, though, who is also very fast and still is Michael Whitaker. And the reason, when people ask who's your favorite rider of all time, the reason I pick Michael is he literally, you'll see him on a horse one day that it looks like he just got out of the field in Leicestershire, England, and the next day he's winning a Grand Prix on it. I don't know how he does it. I mean, literally, he can get on any horse. I mean, it isn't like. I'm sure he has owners that have bought him very expensive horses, but so many of the horses have not been expensive, and he makes them, they all jump. And I think he's just a genius in his ability to make any horse a good horse. And he is fast.
Yeah, and he's fast. What a great choice. And he's such a smooth rider, and he's almost like he's just a little, he's sneaky fast, because he doesn't look like he's going fast, but he's so still and so smooth, and that's Michael's. That's a fantastic choice. Okay, thank you so much for answering that. And I love asking those questions too, and watching. It's like, well, I got to name this person, I got to name that person, because there are so many great ones. But certainly McLean and Michael, those are two perfect picks. Okay, so Carly, I think we have a couple questions for Leslie from our audience, and thank you so much for everyone for joining us tonight and being part of this show with Leslie. It's so great to hear the stories that you have for us and to share those with all of us. When we have a chance here, go ahead and put up that first question for us, please. From Pam Johnston. I used to work at a riding stable after I graduated high school, and this one horse nicknamed Buster, his hindquarters were higher than his shoulders. How often does that happen to a young horse?
Okay, so there's a horse with his hindquarters are higher than the shoulders. Is he still? Well, okay. First of all, most horses are growing up are higher behind than in front. As they get older, they tend to level out. I would say that it's not for an older horse to be higher behind than in front. That's not so abnormal. It happens all the time. Conformation changes. So I don't. I think that's fairly normal. But is it an advantage or a disadvantage? Just as long as the horse is able to carry, they're predisposed then to probably being a little bit on their front end if they're built that way. But as long as they can, get back on their haunches to jump a jump, or maybe you do dressage. whatever, as long as they can center their balance nicely on their hind end, I don't think it's a problem.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the question. Question number 2 from Katie. Which horse was the most challenging, and how did you work through the challenging quirk? Okay, so so obviously, and many of the top horses have little quirks and little things about them, and
Yeah.
When the top horses have such character to them, they're obviously there's things you have to work through. Is there anything that stands out for you with a horse that was a real challenge that you had to work through?
Well, I guess, yeah, I would guess Pre-Aubert was, usually your really great horses don't have huge flaws. That's why they're great. But I would say Pre-Aubert de Calvary, who again, he was actually, I think, the fastest horse I ever had. And he actually was probably my favorite horse to ride of all horses. But he had a huge water issue when I got him. And that was challenging because I'm really a chicken when it comes to riding horses that aren't good at the water. I'll just fall. I mean, if I'm coming to the water jump and I think the horse is going to stop, I basically jump off. My husband Peter he's an event rider, a very successful event rider. He rode for Canada internationally. And when I had Pre-Aubert, I'll never forget, the year before the World's Championships, I'm coming around practicing. I'm with George. And we come around the turn, and George has built a water jump in his ring in Palm Beach. And I come around the turn, and literally the horse sort of just props a little bit about 4 strides out, and I just fall flat. I go flying off of him. And Peter looks at me and says, that's just embarrassing. So I said, I'm sorry, it really scares me. So he gets on, and he took him up. Back in those days, Palm Beach Point, which those of you who know Wellington know it's now a huge horse development, was a bunch of canals, anywhere from 2 feet wide to 8 feet wide to 10 feet wide. And Peter literally took him back up there and rode him literally. The horse started to stop once, and Peter rode him down into the canal and back up the other side. And that horse ended up jumping canal after canal. And that's really the only reason why we ended up going to the World Games, was because of my husband just made it happen. It wasn't going to happen with me on the horse, for sure. So wow. Yes, that was a challenging.
There's so many great stories there. So first of all, you went to the World Championships with a horse that learned to jump over canals that probably had alligators in it. So that's there.
That would keep him from jumping in the water. Once not going over it.
So there's Leslie's training tip for the night. If you have a horse that doesn't want land and go in the water, jump over alligators. And the other thing is, I would have thought maybe the gutsiest rider I've ever seen in my life was Leslie Howard, and here she called herself a chicken when it comes to water. So
terrified.
This is groundbreaking news tonight on the Jay Duke Show. One more question from the audience, please. Nicole Best, do you miss Zip Zoo?
Thanks, Nicole. Zip Zoo. Well, I like Zip Zoo a lot because he was just a brat. Zip Zoo he was a horse we bought in Europe, and a very pretty horse, and very talented actually. But he would he'd put you in the ground quicker than you could blink. So do I miss riding Zip Zoo? No. And he ended up going to college and was one of the kids' favorites. So there you go. But do I miss him? No. Did I like him? Yeah. He was. I like horses that have that little quirk to them. I really do.
Well, Leslie, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been, your stories are amazing, and everything you've done for the sport and are still doing for the sport. I thank you. You've been an influence on my career. You've been an influence on thousands of others, and it's just amazing to have you on the show and be able to talk to you like this. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Next
Thank
week,
you, Jay.
another great guest, Daniel Blumen's coming on the show, and looking forward to that one. Like I said, this is the show where all the stars come to. It's amazing to talk to all these superstars of the sport. So check us out next week on Horse Network to hear from Daniel Blumen. I want to thank Finish Line Horse Products for presenting the show tonight. Check them out. Really great company for your horse's health and long-term care. Equishopper, anything you need for your horse, go check them out at equishopper.com. Any product you need, you're going to find it there. And the equivault.com, any exercise, it's the largest exercise library in the world. Go to the vault and check it out. Any exercises you need for your horse of any level are going to be there. Thank you to Horse Network, and thank you to Carly Sparks for helping us through this evening. And we'll see you next week. As always, ride safely and respect the horse. Good night.